So, the Book of Mormon musical, it gets so many things right, not just like the surface level stuff, but like some really accurate cultural things about Mormonism, some psychological dynamics of Mormonism that I want to touch on. Historically speaking, the mostly dense population of Mormons you'll find that in Utah. And so a lot of the Book of Mormon musical is talking about Salt Lake City, which is the capital city of the state of Utah. It's going to reference a lot of things about Utah, but a lot of the cultural aspects of Utah. And I can honestly say that I lived in the state of Utah from 7 to 27, pretty much.
Wow.
So for 20 years, I can claim Utah as my home. And I always say, I did my time, I'm out,
Yep.
and I'm not
Yep.
going back. But
You got out.
I was not let go for good behavior, quite the opposite, I think. But I can speak to a lot of the cultural things because I grew up there. My formative years were in the state of Utah in the religion. And
Mm.
so they do get a lot of things that people experience in Utah. So here's one: the pressure to be bright and shiny. Elder Price is the embodiment of Mormon perfectionism. He's handsome, ambitious, spiritually
Mm.
elite, and constantly striving to be the best. Mormon missionaries, they are known for being very clean cut, shaved, really good haircuts,
Mm.
always portraying themselves as brown nosing, squeaky clean person. So we are just taught from an early age that we are chosen, that we are special, and the youth have been told since they were little ones that they are on this planet for a specific reasons, that you're never anywhere on accident, that every calling
Mm.
that you are given, anytime that you are extended any kind of a role in the church, it's not by accident. You are to live up to that. Early on, you're given what's called a patriarchal blessing, and in it outlines a lot of things that really make you feel like, wow, I am a special person.
Mm.
I'm an ordained son of God. I am a chosen daughter of Christ, not of
Okay.
Christ, sorry, of Heavenly Father. This is a big deal. And as a missionary, you have a calling that you are to go out and save people and to bring people to the true church
Mm.
and to convert them. And it's such a big responsibility. And it can be something that we joke and laugh at as how it's depicted, but I had a lot of friends that didn't make it the 2 years of their mission. Some didn't even make it through the missionary training center because their anxiety got so high that they weren't able to handle it. Here are some things that you need to know.
Mhm.
These are actual truths about a Mormon mission. It's not this way today, but it definitely was when I was a kid and when my mother served her mission. But you were only allowed to call home twice a
Wait,
year.
hold on. Whilst you're away, twice a
Yes.
year.
You are isolated from your family. You are taken away.
Whoa.
Basically, the parents will drop you off at the missionary training center if they're able
Okay.
to, or put you on a plane and send you to the missionary training center, wherever that may be. And you will not talk to your child on the telephone more than twice a year.
Wow.
Now the rules have changed, but
Wow.
historically speaking,
Mm.
for the majority of history, you were allowed to only phone your family twice a year. One of those days was Mother's Day. They would do that for Mother's Day so that you could talk to your mom
Okay.
and wish her a happy Mother's Day. And then the other days on
Oh.
Christmas Day. And how long you spoke to your family was all up to your mission president, who's the only adult in charge of you while you're serving a mission. So everybody's 19 years old, 19, 20, 21 years old,
Okay.
and you're there and you're at the mercy of your mission president. You could get a really chill, cool mission president who is really fun to be around, is lax on the rules, or you could get a really strict mission president who will only give you
Wow.
10 minutes to talk to your parents. Other ones might say, "Oh, you can stay on the phone all day." And it just kind of depends the luck of the draw, just like,
Wow.
yeah. So,
Why do they do that? What do you think?
um, I think a lot of it, okay, I mean, I can tell you in the faith, it's because they think that you're going to get distracted from your real purpose, which is to focus on conversion and to proselytize and all the things. I
Hmm.
think if you can isolate anybody long enough, you can get them really to believe what it is
I
that they're
see.
doing. For me, I saw it causing a lot of harm to some missionaries where they got so homesick.
Wow.
It was a big struggle with their anxiety. You're allowed
Okay.
to write home on a weekly basis. So you're given a few hours. It's called a P day. It stands for preparatory day, and you have that day where you can do laundry, you can go grocery shopping, writing home. And my generation was emails. My mother's generation was handwritten letters. Now they have seen some of the effects on missionaries. And so there's no longer this hold on missionaries to only be able to call. You can call now, I
Oh, okay.
believe.
Was that an update from God? Was that God saying, okay, now you can, it's 2011, you can do that now. It's
Oh, I wish it was
2020.
2011. It was 2021 probably when
Wow.
the rules started changing.
Wow. It's very interesting how, for however long it's been running and they've been doing the missionary
Yeah.
services, it only takes recently for them to see the toll. And the thing is,
Yes.
the toll that is taken on the missionaries is not
Yeah.
something that they've only just realized. It's something that
Yeah. No.
they've noticed for a while. And I
Yeah.
think all of a sudden now
Yeah.
they need to show some form of care or they need to pay attention to it. But
Yeah.
why did it take so long?
I think ultimately they started seeing the numbers drop. Less
I,
people were starting to serve missions. And so they wanted to make it more a friendlier way for them to
hmm,
be able to serve missions. So if they could take
yeah,
away that ban, they hoped that more people would serve missions because their anxiety wouldn't take over and they would
wow.
have more of an outlet. I mean, Evans, think about it. These are 18, 19-year-old
Yes.
children going out into the world. It's their first time leaving mom and dad, and it's not easy.
No.
And some of them are going to very, very poor foreign countries from
Mm,
their middle class upbringing,
right.
and it's a shocking experience for them. My ex told me a story about it got so bad for one of the young men that was serving with him, he ran away from his mission and they didn't know where he was for
Oh,
a
okay.
significant amount of time. He just ran away and got on a train or something and
It
took
wasn't with the
off.
lady, was it?
No,
That
it
would have been
was.
more romantic. Okay. Okay. That's unfortunate.
Oh, I am certain that there were plenty of stories,
Yeah. I
that could
wonder
be
if he
told.
was baptize you. I wonder if he was doing
I'm gonna baptize you. Yeah. So, yeah.
baptize you. Sorry guys.
We'll
Silly
get to
time.
that song. Other things that they get right. The emotional repression, the song Turn It Off. Like a light switch.
Just go
It's a
click
nifty little
click.
Mormon trick. Yeah, exactly. That's another brilliant satire of the Mormon emotional culture where
Hmm.
you smile through the pain. You stuff down the fear. You pretend that everything is fine and you push it down. You deny that it exists. Whether that's doubt, trauma, sexual expression, orientation, depression, all of it, all of those things, you're really not taught to feel.
Yeah.
The only thing that you're taught to feel is, the growing power of God that grows
Yes.
inside of you when it confirms whatever the prophet has said,
Yes.
but definitely not any feelings of anger, contention, or even questioning.
Yes.
Anytime
Right.
that you are trying to critically think, no,
Nope.
no,
Turn it
turn that
off.
off.
Like
Yeah.
light switch. Just go click.
It's a nifty little Mormon trick. Yeah, it is. Sadly, I've spent
Wow.
so much of my life. Well, we were saying from 7 to 27, I lived in Utah. From birth to 37,
Mm,
I did that. I
wow.
turned it off.
Pretty much anything that makes you start to realize your individuality as you
Yeah.
are your person. This is you. This is who you are. And
Yeah.
anything that does that, whether it's an emotional
Yeah.
response, a sexual, expression, anything like that, that makes you you.
Yeah.
That makes you not part of the hive.
Mhm.
is bad. The only thing
Mhm.
that you can express is anything that confirms the hive that you are already existing in, which is your
Yeah.
belief system.
Evans, did you use the hive analogy on accident or was that intentional?
Right? I mean, intention. I was thinking it.
Okay, so
Yeah.
do you know that Utah is called the beehive state?
What? Really? Oh
Uh-huh.
no
It's
way.
it is
Okay, I didn't know that.
exactly.
Okay, that
Yeah.
was not intentional then. If that's what you were
There you
asking.
go. That's
Okay.
what I'm getting at is that
Huh.
there is a hive mentality behind all of this. So you landed on that analogy, but it's very, very much
Oh.
part of Mormon culture as well. Yeah,
Okay.
it's the beehive state. So
What?
yeah,
It's called
it's
that.
called the beehive state. Yeah.
No way.
Yes.
Wow.
I know, Evans. I know.
Don't think about it, guys.
Yeah, I'm turning it off
Turn it
right
off.
now.
Turn it off.
Moving on to the next thing. So here's a big one that mission culture is performative and sales driven. I promise you that if you interview a bunch of missionaries, including my ex, he would tell you that some of the things that would make him cringe the most on his mission were that salesman approach.
Mm,
Elder Cunningham so beautifully puts it in one of the songs when, Elder Price is, kind of going through the whole narrative of the Book of Mormon and the history of the church and everything.
yes.
And Elder Cunningham concludes the song by saying something like, if you get a Book of Mormon, we'll throw in a set of steak knives, and
Yes.
it is
Yes. Yes.
so much. I mean, he's pointing out really how missionaries are taught to
Oh yeah.
act. It really has a lot of sales pitches. It's very
Mm.
much coming from that capitalistic way of selling things, marketing, all of it.
I think this is a general approach across mostly evangelical denominations of Christianity, like Seventh-day Adventists.
Mhm.
We have an approach when it comes to, at least from what I remember and what I've been involved in, whether it's crusades or preaching. A lot of the time, when they have like some form of established events like a crusade or bringing people in to give them the message, they do that alongside giving people food, feeding people.
Mm.
So they go to a place
Hmm.
that is developing, a place where people are
Yeah.
lacking,
Yeah.
and they have food around, and they say, "Well, you're gonna have to listen to
Yeah.
the preaching, and then after you
Yeah.
listen to the preaching, then you can eat." So a lot of people come in already compromised,
Yeah.
or they get a free book or something, but it's
Yeah.
always behind
Yeah.
that you have to buy in first before we sell to
Yes.
you.
So, one of the things we do in the Mormon faith as missionaries is we offer English lessons. So, anytime you go to a
There you
foreign
go.
country, they will offer English lessons, and
Ah,
they use that as a tactic to get people to listen. And they just say, we'll teach you a 45-minute lesson, but the last 15 minutes we're gonna, share with you a spiritual thought or something because we really want you to know this. And I cringed at that so many
mm,
times. And that manipulation of people, that luring them
that's what
in
it
under
is.
those pretenses
That's what it is.
just always made me uncomfortable. Again, even the Book of Mormon musical, when it came out in 2011, I had to turn it off. I had to
Mm,
turn off any of these thoughts that made me cringe. Like, why can't we go see it? If it's all wrong,
yeah,
why not go watch it and then be able to, with more fervence,
more
go
fervent.
out into the world and
Yeah,
say the Book of Mormon musical has
without
it wrong? Like,
confidence. Yeah,
why shouldn't we do that?
exactly.
And the same with any of these other tactics that I witness. They always made me cringe, and it always made me be like, well, but if the church is true, couldn't it stand on its own 2 feet? Why do we have to lure people in with these other things, with, like you said, food, activities?
I think this would probably be some of the most predatory ones, but I don't know. I fall on both sides on that one. Is healthcare.
Okay.
Sometimes there are professionals in the denomination that will go to these areas and they'll go with their nurses and doctors, right?
Yeah.
Like professional nurses and doctors, right? They'll
Yeah.
go there who are in the religion and they'll
Yeah.
say, if you come, we will check your blood pressure, we will do this for
Hmm.
you, we will do this for
Hmm.
you. And then, for free, you just have to stay and listen to the sermon. Now, on both sides, I am on both sides because on one hand, I can see how that's helpful. I understand that
Sure.
certainly, but I just can't ignore how predatory that actually is.
Yeah.
I just can't ignore it. Yeah, I just can't pretend it's
So,
not right.
yeah. So in the Mormon faith, like I said, they focus on the elders, which
Mm.
are the male Mormon missionaries, the youth, the equivalent in gender, where it's the females.
What are the
Um,
females called? I think
they're
the
the
males are
sisters.
elders. Oh,
So
so
the elders
oh,
are the,
elders and sisters. That's a bit of a
yes.
demotion. That is not
Oh,
equal.
do you want to know what else is crazy, Evans? So, historically speaking, the elders were called at 19. The girls are only called at 21. And the reason for that is because they
Oh.
wanted to make sure. Remember how I told you you get married very young
Mm-hmm.
in the Mormon faith? They want the women to put their focus on finding that return missionaries, that male companion.
Okay.
And if by the age of 21 you haven't been able to find them, then you can consider going on a mission. But they
Okay.
have the higher, age for the females because they wanted them to give the priority to motherhood and securing a mate, securing a partner, and getting married.
Wow.
Now they've changed that. Now elders can start serving a mission as early as 18, and the girls can also serve much younger. I can't remember
Mm.
exactly when the girls start. But there's another category, and those are called the senior missionaries. And the senior missionaries are typically a husband and wife who are grandma and grandpa age, and they
Okay.
go out and they serve senior missions. And so a lot of times what you'll
Okay.
see there are retired medical doctors that are going out on
Hmm.
missions and doing exactly what you described. I had a really wonderful leader of my faith that when he got to the age to serve a mission, he was a retired medical doctor. And I believe he actually got called to Ghana. And he went out
Oh.
there and was a doctor out there and used whatever expertise he had out on his mission. And so you'll see a lot of that. Another really screwy
Mm.
thing about serving a mission at that age is I've had so many friends, that when they became mothers or fathers, their parents were just about getting to that age of being able to go out and serve this couple's mission. And that's when some of us needed our parents the most, is when we started having our own kids. And so it comes with kind of like mixed feelings because it's like they want to go out and serve a mission because that's now where they're at,
Yes.
but then also they're becoming grandparents and they're
Mm.
missing out on that time by going to whatever country they're being asked to serve. So it also comes with some mixed feelings as well
I see.
when we talk about the senior couples. But yeah,
Mm.
so there's that as well. But anyway, what I was meaning with the performative and sales driven, on top of all the things we've talked about, is by framing the Ugandan mission the way that they do, it shows how the Mormon missionaries often prioritize numbers, image, and results over real human connection.
Mm.
And I hate to say it, but that's a very big thing. These missionaries have it stressed on them to get a certain number every month, to reach out. It's so highly documented. Like, who were you with? How much time did you spend with
Mm-hmm.
them? How many people did you baptize this month? It's so big that when you return home from your mission, there's this added pressure of like, oh, how many people did you baptize? How many
Mm-hmm.
people did you bring to the fold, bring to the faith? And so there's a lot of pressure for missionaries to get a certain number. I remember even when I dated young men, like, oh, where did you serve your mission? How many people did you baptize? Like, this was an important thing to discuss. It
Wow.
wasn't even
Yeah.
so much how many do you, keep in contact with or whatever. It's like, how, what were the
Right.
numbers
Right.
and
Yeah.
what
What
were
were
the
the numbers? How many
results?
did you
Yeah.
baptize? Yeah.
Yep, exactly.
Wow.
And a lot of times, many of the missionaries arrive with zero understanding of the culture, zero understanding of who the people are that you are going to be spending so much time with.
Mm,
It's really just about these missionaries bringing their faith to the people. It's so tone deaf in so
mm,
many instances where these white young men are like, we have the full truth, we have the fullness of the gospel, and we're bringing it to the people. It doesn't matter what their experience is like. So I can speak for the Italian people. They didn't like it when you
mm,
had these white Mormon boys from Utah coming and calling the shots. Because remember,
mm.
they're called elders. They are
Right.
not spoken to in the informal, they are spoken to in the formal. Okay, so they are addressed very formally, very
Mm,
respectfully, as if these 18, 19-year-old young men, have more authority than a 75-year-old who's had a full life of lived experiences. They are
wow.
talked to in reverence, and they are deferred to as superior because they've had this training and they have the mantle of God that's literally placed on them when they go out and served a mission.
Wow.
And
Okay.
so these elders have authority, and it's such a
Mhm.
westernized authority
Yeah.
that they are then pushing on
Yeah.
to people like this, in this case, the
Yeah.
Ugandans.
It's just soft colonization. That's what it
I know.
is. That's what it is.
And there's a song that is, that we can talk about more later. It's I Am Africa.
Yes.
You know
Yes.
the one I'm talking about.
Yes.
And I love
We
when
are
Elder
Africa.
Cunningham joins the song and says, like Bono, I am Africa. I mean, it's so performative. The irony of that song is like, oh, what's the line when they even say like the Africans are African, but I am Africa.
Yes. Yes.
Like they can call them, but I am true Africa
Yes.
because I'm Bono. Like seriously, it's so performative
Mm,
in nature that these missionaries come out and they're like, yeah, 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 you might be African, but I am Africa. It's
mm, mm.
so reductive, not okay.
It's not okay. I want to throw a little bit of light on what a young man, an 18, 19-year-old young man who has been filled in his mind with all of these privileged thoughts, white man from middle class America coming down to somewhere like Africa, struck with poverty and unfortunate events. I'm trying to maybe play some devil's advocate here and just say how predatory it's actually on them as well,
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
they've not been given any exposure to the
Absolutely.
culture. They've not been given any kind of like
Hmm.
introduction,
Hmm.
any form of expectation. Yeah, as far as I'm aware, as far as what you said, they are only aware of the kind of language they will be dealing with.
Yes, pretty much.
Yeah, so that's
Maybe a
all.
little bit of a general fluffy
Right.
exposure to
Okay,
the country.
of course, they would give them a Wikipedia introduction
Sure,
to
that's all it is.
right, but
Absolutely.
as to what kind of problems you're facing, what kind of um prejudice that goes on, what is the situation going on there that can make you as a human being impactful, not just as a Mormon elder. And
Hmm.
as a young man who is 18, who's been filled with all these
Yeah,
patriarchal approach to life and this
yeah,
superiority complex, and being
yeah.
spoken to formally and being made to feel like you are pretty much a representative of God,
I know.
in
Yeah,
these
yeah.
poor, ignorant peoples in front of them, and they pretty much have to defer to you,
Yeah,
how unfortunate it is for them to be made to expect that, because when before they are sent out, they are isolated from their own families. So
yeah.
it's a lot of crazy things that they have to go through. So there's no surprise how
Mm.
they come to these places and they are result driven, because they've already been conditioned. They've already been placed into a hostage situation to say, if you don't complete the full 2 years, you are gonna come home dishonored. You're gonna come
Yes.
home not fully, you're respected, okay, but not fully respected as you would be
No.
as an
No.
RM,
Yeah.
right? And
That's
obviously,
right.
if you are motivated by the ladies as well, then well, the ladies are
That's
not
a
gonna
whole other
like you so
thing.
much as
Yeah.
well. So I mean,
Yeah.
you better buck up and man up, right? You better you better man up and push it down, turn it off like a light
Yeah.
switch, and
Man
just
up and turn it off.
yes,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
pretty much the message. And
Yeah.
I mean, what it must feel like to be a
Yes.
young Mormon missionary,
Yeah.
I can only imagine.
I really appreciate that you are playing the devil's advocate because to a certain extent, like we were saying, it's not harmless to serve a
Mm,
mission. You're harming a lot of different aspects, whether it's going into a foreign country and basically telling them that they are doing everything wrong and that this is the right way to live your life and not really honoring or respecting their culture. I know
mm,
that a lot of times in the Mormon faith in Italy, it was like, oh my goodness, all these Utah people from America are coming and trying to impose on us, the way that they think, the way that they believe. And Italy is a pretty westernized country in and of itself. I can't
yes.
only imagine what it's like to go to Chile, Botswana, or any other place that isn't quite as westernized and having that kind of an attitude projected onto them. And
Yeah.
so these young men, I remember in Italy, I worked with a lot of them when I was younger. I did what's called splits with the sister missionaries, where I wasn't technically a missionary, but I would go out with the sister missionaries.
I
And
see.
then I spent a lot of time with the elders also that were out in Italy. And I just remembered that sometimes they were like, okay, my mission president has said I needed to do this, this, and this, but the people aren't receiving it well. And it's frustrating, but they don't even understand why, because they've been given all this authority and so they're just wanting to just deliver what's been asked of them, but they don't understand that it's not being received well, not because of them, but just because it's tone deaf. When you go
Yes.
into another culture and you're asking them to do something that is only done in a very high society setting in Utah,
Mm,
isn't going to translate very well in Italy, isn't going to
right.
translate very
Right.
well in Japan. Yeah, so you're right. It's causing a lot of frustration, and the
Yeah.
focus is on the numbers.
Yeah. If you think about it as well, just on a general mainstream Christian approach, you are empowered to go to these places and you're also told that you will be persecuted. And
Mhm,
when you are being
mhm.
persecuted, that is a sign that you're doing it right. So,
Yeah,
like
sure.
the whole thing is presented to a missionary as you have every right, you're entitled to go to these places, and if things go bad, that is a confirmation that you're doing it
That's
right,
right.
and obviously the devil will get in your way. Not that you're just tone deaf, you're heartless, you're cold, you're not responsive to the real issues that you're actually dealing with there. No, not that. It couldn't possibly be that, or not that you are just an asshole. No, no, it's not that. It's just that
No.
it's because you're being persecuted and because they are possessed by
Yeah,
devils. That's the best
sure.
explanation. It's just,
Sure.
I mean, you see that even in the West, in the US, like sometimes you see these social media videos, at least I've seen some of them before, where they would classify someone who would challenge a street preacher. They would classify them as, oh, when the devil tries to disrupt God's work. Like they would put that as the caption of the video, and it would be
Yeah,
some random guy trying to say that, hey, look, you are disturbing the peace of the people here. You're making noise. You're using a megaphone to preach your
yeah,
bigotry, your hatred. Can you please
yeah,
just stop being an asshole? And it's like, oh, see, the devil tried to come in and stop. That's how they frame it. That's how they
yeah,
see it. And there is never going to be. It's so difficult to break through that line to reach to that humanity that they have that have been
yeah.
starved away from them to say, hey, just don't be a dick.
Which poor Elder
Elder
Price.
Price, Jesus told him.
Jesus
He
told him
said,
he was a dick. Yeah. So, poor Elder Price. Moving on to the next thing that I wanted to bring up, the belief in absurd but sacred doctrines. Joseph Smith finding gold plates and translating them with a magic rock, totally real doctrine. They totally get that right. Kolob. In the song I Believe, they talk about the planet or the star Kolob, which is supposed to be either where God dwells or really close to where God dwells. Jesus coming to the Americas, again, real doctrine. The musical makes these beliefs sound ridiculous, but only because they are actually taken out of the sacred context that we as Mormons believe in. That Jews really built boats and sailed to America, that in 1978 God changed his mind. The turn it off ideologies, a lot of these things are taken from the sacred doctrines that the Mormon faith
Mm.
believes. And so a lot of these things are just like a little bit jarring to see and to laugh at, with, in this huge auditorium full of people that are laughing at it. And then you find yourself laughing at it. And then as an ex-Mormon, you're like, holy shit, I believed in this.
Yep.
I fully believed in this. I would have given my life for this.
Yeah. That.
I would have
Yes.
attested that Joseph Smith was a true prophet of God
Yeah.
and that he really did translate the Book of Mormon, only to find out in adulthood that it wasn't the way that I was
Wow.
taught, but looking at a rock in a hat with his head, stuffed into a hat. And that's not the narrative that I was taught, but that's how it was. And some of these things are just kind of crazy and they're laughed at. And I think it's great to be able to sit down and laugh at different aspects of different religions that we think are, silly and crazy.
Yes.
But Mormons really, really believe these things to be true. The Native Americans, the Latin Americans really
Hmm.
come from ancient Jewish roots. And even though now we have undisputed DNA testing that that is not who the Native Americans or the Latin Americans come from. And yet we believe it.
Wow.
And we did for the longest time, even before there was DNA evidence to prove otherwise. Just
Yeah.
like the fact that a lot of Christians in general believe the earth is only 6,000 years old, when we have so much verifiable data that
It's older
proves
than
that
that.
completely
Yeah.
wrong,
Yeah.
and everybody outside the faith thinks that they're absurd, but not the people in
Yeah. Not
it.
the people in it. It's very strange when you're in it and you're never really inclined to look outside. And if, the moment you think of looking outside, there is that obviously demonization of it,
Yeah.
and that's how you know it's a dishonest position to take, because
Yeah.
an honest position would be able to analyze everything around their belief system without demonizing it. But
Yeah.
they fail the first test by saying, hey, can I look outside of the sources to verify? No, 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 they are bad people. You're going to
Yeah.
lose your way. You're going to lose your way from Jesus. God is not going to be very happy with you, blah 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 blah. And it's like, but why? Even if the information that's out there are lies,
Yeah.
there's no harm in reading the lies and just saying, "Oh yeah, that's a lie." Clearly, obviously,
Yeah.
that's just a lie. What's the harm in that? The fact that you have to demonize, a lot of it is motivated by fear.
Yeah.
That's the underlying barrier. That's why a lot of it is honed on so much, is the fear. Because without the fear, how else are you going to stop people from ever doubting, ever thinking outside of the
Yeah.
box? Like, how else? Fear is the biggest motivator. We're talking about catastrophic results here. As someone, as a Mormon, who would dare to question, because
I know.
you're talking about physical isolation. You have to deal with the fact that even in the afterlife, you have that isolation as well, because not only do
You
you have
won't be
to,
with your
you won't be
family.
with your family
Yeah.
because of that. There's a lot of that, that's
Yeah.
holding. So is that fear of isolation, fear of abandonment,
I
that.
feel like one
Yeah.
of the things that make the Mormon church unique is that unlike other religions where people think, oh, yeah, I'll be with my family again, that's like a no-brainer. In the Mormon faith, they keep your family hostage. If you love your family and you stray, you won't get to be
Wow.
with them in the next life. And
Wow.
so that's heavy. That's very
Yeah.
scary. And even for me, when I really gave myself permission to question and to study and to learn and to look at outside sources, I took it very seriously, not because I'm just a nerd. I am a nerd. For the record, humans out there that are listening, I am a nerd. But it was mostly because I had the salvation of my five children
Mm,
that I didn't take lightly. I was not going to just abort mission. I wasn't going to jump ship
mm,
if I wasn't 100% sure that this religion wasn't actually the one and only true church on the face of the earth.
yes.
And so for me, I took it very seriously and I studied it out and I spent an entire
Wow.
year not wasting a single moment. I didn't watch television for that entire year. I spent all my free time delving into everything to redeem
Mm,
my faith. I came from an apologetic perspective,
mm,
wanting desperately for the church to be what it claimed to be, and it wasn't. Ultimately, at every turn, Evans, it wasn't. And I had to sit with that all alone. I had nobody
mm,
that was supporting me as I went through that. And it was so isolating and so alone. And the ramifications of it still are lasting for me today. I've lost almost everybody that I used to call family
wow.
because of this decision. I didn't do it lightly. And
Mm,
that's why, we're laughing, we're joking, we're having fun, but this was very personal,
yeah,
very serious.
yeah,
And these things that are laughed at in the Book of Mormon musical, I believed in wholeheartedly.
yeah.
I sang a church song about if I could hie to Kolob, if I could make it to
Mm,
Kolob, I believed this.
yeah.
I thought it was true. And so watching the Book of Mormon musical, I loved it. I
Mm,
loved it because it allowed me to laugh and that therapeutic side of things. But at the same time, just like my friend that left kind of stunned, it was hard because a lot of the things I was laughing at, I really believed and I had to walk away from them and it didn't, really, you know, it it's something that I've had to sit with a lot, and I've enjoyed listening to the soundtrack of the Book of Mormon musical. But then there's that pause that you
mm,
take where it's like, wow, people really believe this still today, and some of these people I still love dearly, but unfortunately, I've chosen a different path that technically, according to the faith's tenet, mean I don't have a seat at the table anymore. I'm not really going to be with them according to their doctrine. And so it is very, unsettling and sad
yeah.
and difficult, but yeah, I mean that spooky Mormon hell dream, it captures perfectly that fear-based Mormon approach. Even, the depiction, do you remember the coffee dancing on stage? The
Yes, yeah,
Starbucks.
the two, yeah, the
Yeah,
Starbucks.
yeah.
Oh man, that was
So,
just so crazy.
but Evans,
Yeah.
there is Mormon rhetoric and Mormon talks that say for one cup of coffee, you're going to be kept out of heaven. I mean, these are
Wow.
serious things. Having
Wow.
lustful thoughts, having a different sexual orientation than hetero, that in Turn It Off, my
Turn it off.
hetero side has one, that part there, because
Yes,
all of
because
all of
he started
that
to have feelings for Steven. And then
for
his
Steve,
header for
yeah.
Steve, yes,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
his hetero side won.
Yeah, that anxiety around worthiness is very
Mm-hmm.
real in the Mormon
Mm-hmm.
faith, and it's a lot, especially I would argue the youth wrestles with
Mm,
because they need to be worthy to serve a mission. They need to um, be able to do that because, again, otherwise, you have to bear the weight of the stigma, whether you go and you can't return having done a full 2-year mission, you become a pariah and, you definitely will stand out. And so it's just, that shame, that fear, all of that is very accurate depiction of what it's like to be in the Mormon faith.
we know what to do with that, guys. You know what to do with that. All right. Okay. Three, two, one. Turn it
Turn
off.
it off.
Like light switch. Just go click.
It's a nifty little Mormon trick.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. On a more
Yeah.
serious note, like it's
Yeah.
when you realize that this is something that you used to
Hmm.
believe, take seriously, and you never really question it. It's kind of like this veil being taken out. The magic trick being
Yeah.
showed to you, like
Yeah.
this, and it's like you can't go back
I
to
know.
seeing the magic
I
again. You
know.
you just
I
can't.
know.
Is one thing that I always think about and I wrestle with a bit is the idea that when someone comes out, is honest with themselves and say, you know what, I don't believe this thing, and it's like, okay, well, that means that we're not going to spend time with you in eternity in the afterlife. So how does that translate to say, therefore, this finite life that I only have time with you here, because I'm not going to be able to
Hmm.
spend time with you in eternity, at least let me spend time with you here now, so that for
Oh,
eternity can spend time apart. But then that's not what happens, and this is how I know that a lot
no.
of these Christian type religions are not based on love as they claim it to be. Because if it was based on love, and you
Yeah.
have a point where in the afterlife you are going to be clearly separated from your family, wouldn't the loving thing then to be to spend the few times you have with them now? Wouldn't that
Yeah.
mean a lot more to say, hey, look, you're
Yeah.
not going to go to heaven, you're going to be tortured in hell.
Yeah.
So for the next
Yeah.
50, 70, however years you have on this planet, I'm going to spend a much quality time with you because I know you're going to go to hell and burn. And I hope that it doesn't happen, but that's what's going to happen according to
Yeah.
my faith. So I'm going to appreciate you for the limited time that you have. But no, it's the opposite. Because I'm not going to spend time with you for eternity, then I'm not going to spend time with you in the finite. How
Yeah.
does that follow?
It
except
doesn't.
except you are not in a loving community. You are not.
Yeah.
You are actually in a highly
Yeah.
demanding,
Yeah.
fear-based community
Yeah.
that controls
Yeah.
people, what they eat, what they wear, who they fuck, and who they're family with. Is
Yeah. I would say that yeah, the majority, unfortunately, in Jehovah Witness, Seventh-day Adventist, Mormonism, there's a lot of the shunning, there's a lot of that. I would say that it's less likely to happen, but there are cases where the family chooses to be more loving and chooses to be
yes.
more supportive. And I would say that those are the families, although more rare, those are the ones that really get, I think, the message that, I mean, we know historically that there was a Jesus, and I believe that is the message he wanted to get across. I don't think he ever intended to be a deity. I think that that was put on him after the fact.
The Book of Arnold.
I would like to say kudos to those families that still love and hold tightly to their children who they have been taught to believe are wayward. Those are great people, but I would say for the majority, they
Yeah.
turn their backs on
Yeah,
them.
yeah, you're right. I mean,
Yeah.
there are people who genuinely see the story side of it, and they don't take themselves too seriously when it comes to their religious beliefs, and they don't take the belief too seriously. They have
Yeah.
that acceptance to say, well, God wouldn't take himself too seriously. He doesn't need to do that, right? So
But
why, right? So
that's your God.
right, that's the thing. It's like,
Yeah.
if you think about it, it's like every
Yeah.
single, even Mormons, like everyone have their own version of God.
Oh, yeah.
They all have their
Every,
own version.
I would argue
Yeah.
that every single member has their own
Yes.
God, their
Oh,
own personal version
yeah.
of their God. It's not this, yeah,
Yeah.
one and only.
Yeah.
Everybody has their
Yeah.
own.
That's on paper, right? On
Hasadika
evil
Iboa.
eye. Yeah, exactly. On paper, everyone has the same God. It's like, no, in reality, it's not. I agree with you. Kudos to the families that are able to look at the stories and look at the
Yeah.
reality of life and
Yeah.
say, okay, do I have to choose between the literal meanings of these stories, or just pick the one, cherry pick the ones that I like and leave the ones that are horrible and just love my children regardless, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of the
Hmm.
time, it takes someone to hold on to their humanity and let some parts of the religion go, if not all of the religion go. You have to
Yeah.
choose between your humanity in order to be loving.
Yeah.
Because if you don't and you let this religion define what your humanity is, that's how the shunning becomes easy, even when it's not
Yeah.
easy on the humanist side. But it becomes
Yeah.
easy when you shut it down, you turn it off, and you just following the rules. Well, the rule
Yeah.
says we need to shun you, so therefore we shun you. That's it.
Yeah.
God doesn't want robots, but in this case, we're going to behave like robots. It's like that.
Yeah.
It's very funny when they do that, when they're doing this shunning thing. It's like, well, I know that it's very painful for a mother to shun their child, but that's what God
Yeah.
wants. And God wants people who are obedient to Him. And His rules say we should shun your child. And therefore, shut your free will down, turn it off, and just follow the rules and just shun your child.
Yep.
But God
Keep
loves
your
you,
head down.
and God loves you and gives you free will, and He wants you to be loving and wants you to be to get out of here, please. Okay, please let's
Yeah.
just call a spade and say most of these Abrahamic, well, I wouldn't even say Abrahamic religion, most of these Christian religions that we're talking, because that's the context you're speaking from, are not loving.
Yeah. All right. Another thing that Book of Mormon musical gets right is the hierarchy and the hero worship. Elder
Mm,
Price, he worships the idea of being like church leaders and having his own planet one day. I
yeah.
mean, that's another doctrine that is absurd, right? People
Yes.
laugh at that. They think it's crazy, but no, we Mormons believe that if we are worthy and righteous, that especially, the males, they will one day be given their own planet where their wives will join them in ruling and creating. Mormonism sets up prophets, apostles, and even local leaders as almost spiritually infallible, and we're taught to follow them and not to question them. We really are taught we're not to question our leaders. We are asked never to argue against a leader, never to
Mm,
question that they
mm,
need to be followed. Anything that they say, even if we disagree with them, we are not to criticize the Lord's anointed. That is
mm-hmm,
actually
mm.
something that we covenant to
Wow.
inside the Mormon temples. We are not to question or criticize ever.
Wow.
We are to follow, even if what we're following is maybe wrong. And maybe even years later, we find out that Black people are actually decent human beings and aren't less than. We are still to follow, the prophet.
Yeah.
And we even have a primary song, children's song, follow the prophet, follow the prophet, follow the prophet, don't go astray.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
Not creepy
because
at
he
all.
knows the way. Yeah. So, yeah, no criticism, hierarchy, hero worship.
Yeah.
Hopefully, I got that song lyric. It's been a long time since.
Giving people unchecked power.
Yeah,
The only people that
100%.
the only people they might report to would be maybe the general board conference high out people other
Yeah.
than them. But they are not in the local churches, they are not in the local temples. That's not what they are. Like if someone becomes an elder, they have unchecked power.
Yes.
And that's dangerous. That's always dangerous. The church and scandals are like synonymous. It's so common now that like people almost expect it, right? Like we already know someone is in the church. We know that their leaders are up to
Yeah.
something, are up to something
Yeah.
conniving and something no good. And it's not doesn't mean that all of them are like that. It just means,
Yeah.
and this is something that I was thinking about the other day, and that is the church, regardless of the denomination, is not a self-correcting system. It
Yeah.
doesn't correct itself. It
No.
takes an external force, someone who is unbiased,
Yeah.
someone who does not care about
Yeah.
the religious ordinances and the hierarchy that they have, to come
Yeah.
in and point out to say, hey, there is an abuse going on here. The church itself does not self correct. And why is that? It's very funny that a group of people that are claimed to be led
God.
by God and the whole squad, the angels, and they have all the extraterrestrial squad behind them, can't point out that, hey, there's a little girl that is being abused by their family. Can't just point out. He can
Yeah.
give them all the information about, oh, 1972, late years later,
Yeah.
oh, finally we like black people. That's fine. They can make all the ordinance changes and all the
Yeah.
new church revelations from God. He can give them all these revelations and doesn't tell them anything about children that are vulnerable,
Yeah.
women that are being abused by their husbands.
Yeah.
Can't reveal that to
Sure.
them. It's almost as though this God has different priorities. And if so,
Yeah.
fuck him. Has a diva evil eye.
There you go. I am wanting to be a crusader, a fighter for that unchecked power that happens in all systems. And, even with my own family situation, having had an abusive father growing up, I just feel like having now exposed that, I am criticized for having done that. But see, that's how this continues to go on. And a lot of people, family members, have said, like, is this really the best way to go about it? I don't know how else to go about it. If we don't expose that these things happen,
Mm.
if we don't expose that unchecked power, whether coming from a leader of a high demand religion or a father in his home, these are systems of where we're allowing people to have the power, the full authority, and
Mm.
nobody's checking in on them. And I'm sorry that now they're being exposed, but all these things will eventually come to light one way or another,
Oh yeah.
whether in the Mormon faith, in the Catholic faith, in, the home across the street from you. That's my point. That's what I'm trying to do, is to say, hey, I grew up in a situation like that. And if you're a little girl, or if you know of one, or if you're a son, daughter, wife, mother, whatever, that find yourself in a situation like that, it's not okay. These things need to be checked, and you need to run to other people that can hopefully find you a safe haven. So, no, I'm not going to uncheck this power. I'm not going to say just because they have the power, they deserve the right to be unquestioned or respected at all costs. I no longer will
No.
be party to those systems. If they cause harm, they should be exposed. And
Oh
the
yeah.
reason why we expose them is so that possibly this will be slightly reduced, because we know that we can't check all systems. But
Hmm.
by exposing them, we're hopefully creating a way for justice to be served in another person's situation. Maybe it won't be in mine, maybe it won't be in the next person's, but not talking about it isn't going to fix the system.
Yes, keeping
And
quiet and on a
so,
hush hush and
yeah,
protecting their image. That's not your
yeah.
job. That's no
And
longer your job.
in the Mormon faith, leaders have come out and said that we do not apologize. We do
Wow.
not apologize. That is actually, something that Elder Dallin H. Oaks, who's one of the top leaders of the faith, who's probably going to become our next prophet, has been reputed to say. He's been, very vocal about how we, as the leadership, we do not apologize. And that's the thing. These people will continue to perpetuate and perpetrate.
Yeah,
And it's very sad. And I just won't be a party to it. And I'm not going to apologize for having exposed anything
exactly.
that was abusive in nature, anything that was harmful and hurtful. I won't stand by it. One of the main reasons why I left the Mormon faith was because of the harmful rhetoric and the harm that it does, especially to the LGBTQ community.
Mm.
And I have very dear people in my life that identify in that community, and I won't stand by a church that harms them and tells them that they're less than, which is another thing that we can talk about, the silencing of the queer identity.
Mm.
That is something big in the Book of Mormon musical that it highlights. The whole Turn It Off song implies that being gay is just something you learn to shut down.
Mm.
It's presented humorously and we laugh and we have a good time, but it points to the real harm that the Mormon church and many other Christian churches can fall right in along with them.
Yeah.
It points to that real harm that the LGBTQ community, especially that of the Mormon faith, are still taught to repress, suppress, and deny who they truly are. And they're not allowed to be. They totally nail that. They totally get that right. And it's not something that is necessarily funny. I love the satire. I love how we joke and we laugh about, the hetero side winning and poor Steve and that, missionary and all the things. But ultimately, that's accurate. The Mormon faith
Yeah.
really tells you to shut it down.
Yeah. It comes from that unfounded trust that are given to these people in position, unfounded trust that are
Yeah.
given to holy scriptures to tell us what to think, to tell us what to do, and to say, well, there are certain feelings that you're not supposed to feel. And if you're feeling
Yeah.
them, that's because you are doing something that is not pleasing to the church or and God.
Ultimately,
You
you are
know,
in the wrong.
you are in the wrong for
If you
feeling that.
are feeling these things, you are in
Yeah.
the wrong. And, even in the song, it talks about how, oh, you're not pretending hard enough. You
Yes.
need to pretend harder.
Yeah.
And so it's like, you're the problem. Ultimately, you are always the
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah.
You are not doing it right.
Yeah. And I was gonna say that a lot of it has to do with a huge misunderstanding of how the human brain works. I was talking to one guy, he was talking to me about, beliefs, and I think the conversation was ending, and then he was saying something in the light of, oh, well, you can choose to believe whatever you want to believe. And I was like, okay, you don't understand that. I understand why you would say that, but that's a huge misunderstanding of the brain state. People don't choose their beliefs. Like, if you think people will choose their beliefs, like, you've totally misunderstand the human experience and how the human brain works. You will underestimate how powerful the brain is. We don't choose our beliefs. Our beliefs are influenced by our nurturing, what kind of entertainment that we expose ourselves to.
Yeah,
Our
our
our, our
environment.
beliefs are, yeah, influenced by a myriad of things, and the only thing that we choose in the act of believing something is the time that we avail ourselves to certain information. That's the only thing we choose. But as to whether you're being convinced of something to be the case or you're
Yeah.
not being convinced of something is the case, that's not something you choose. So I tried to
Yeah.
explain this to him, to say, the way you say it in such a dismissal tone just shows me you don't understand the human nature at all. And a lot of it comes from that, is the unwillingness to understand how human beings actually work, the human nature, how our brains actually work. That's why they can say something like, your feelings are wrong. Because if you understood the human anatomy and the human brain, you would realize that there is no such thing as your feelings are wrong. Because feelings are feedback of something real that was going on internally, that's going on within you, and that needs to be
Mm.
addressed. There's no such thing as the wrong feeling. There's no such thing. And there's no such thing as the wrong sexual orientation. There's no such thing as choosing beliefs. There is no such thing. But all of that comes from ignorance, and willful ignorance most of the time, to say, would you like to understand the human anatomy? No, the human is broken and bad and degraded. What is there to learn about humanity? All you need to learn is about God and about angels and about Mount Kolob and about all of these things. It's like, that does not help humanity and has never helped humanity in any
Yeah.
way. And that's why the book of Arnold was very poignant to me, because a lot of the stories needed to be diluted and changed, because when you look
Yeah.
at it, it's trash. It does not
Yeah.
care about humanity. It doesn't do anything to invest in the psyche, what actually goes on in the human mind. It just tells flimsy, fantastical stories and hoping that you
Yeah.
just ignore your brain and just turn it off.
Yeah.
No.
To help anybody that hasn't seen the Book of Mormon musical, the Book of Arnold is ultimately what the Book of Mormon ends up becoming by the end of the musical. And it's worth watching just to see the evolution of how we get the Book of Arnold, which in and of itself, I would say this is another thing that is accurate in the Book of Mormon musical, is how that evolution from the Book of Mormon to the Book of Arnold,
Mhm.
it shows the art of storytelling, the power of
Yes.
storytelling, and how ultimately Joseph Smith was an excellent storyteller. He was even, I would say, genius. Although it is very, very documentable that he ripped off from a lot of stories that were being circulated in
Yeah.
his time.
That
And
that takes creativity too.
it
That's,
does,
yeah.
but that is the Book of Arnold. He is taking from Boba
Mm.
Fett. He is taking from Star Wars. He's taking from Lord of the Rings. He is taking from all over the place and creating something that is captivating and engaging. And it really spoke to the villagers in Uganda. It's fascinating because ultimately, underlying all of it, this satire of how quickly we can go from a story to a belief into doctrine, which this is another point, the infantilization of members.
Oh
Elder
yeah.
Cunningham making up scripture is accepted instantly because members are trained to defer to authorities and accept teachings without evidence.
Mm.
The Ugandan villagers start believing his outrageous versions of Mormon doctrine, and it highlights how vulnerable people are to charismatic storytelling, which is
Mm.
what we've been talking about. And so
Yes.
this is was another point that I kind of just felt like they hit right on the head. We as people really have this ability to just believe a lot of the things at first glance, that
Yeah.
we're given. And it's funny how we question some things and we completely follow blindly others.
To say something around that is the infantilization, and
Yeah.
also finding the hole in that community and putting that belief system there. Because what happened
Oh,
with
yeah.
Elder Cunningham is very creative.
Yeah.
He saw the need
Yeah.
to reframe the story to
Yes.
fit what they needed at that time.
I know. What were the villagers struggling with?
Well, oh man, it could
What
be a
were the
myriad of
main things?
things.
Okay, I'm going to tell you.
Yeah,
The
it
main
could be a
things that
myriad
they
of
were
things. Yeah.
struggling with was AIDS. And the fact that
Yes.
warlord is going around ordering that all the
Yes.
women needed to have their clits cut off.
Yes. Those were the
And
two
so
main
those are
issues.
like the two big things that these villagers are
Yes.
fighting against, which is absurd. It's crude. I understand. It's
Yes.
not for the faint of heart. So what does he do? Those are the two things that he calls out. He's
Yeah.
just like, why are you going and having sex with a baby? Well, we're
Yes.
having sex with babies because
Because
we've been taught that in order to rid ourselves of AIDS, we need to have sex with virgins, and there are no virgins, so we're having to, babies.
yes.
And he's like, absolutely not. And they were like, well,
Well,
why?
why?
Well,
Yeah.
because in the Book of Mormon, it says, thou shalt not go and
And
fuck a baby. Thou shalt go and fuck
like
a
a
frog.
frog.
But why is he doing that?
Yes.
Part of the song that he is singing about, you're doing it again, Arnold, or
Yeah.
how does the song
You're making things up.
making things up again, Arnold? I
Yes.
mean, the reason why, and he ultimately tells himself, well, but I'm doing it for a good reason this time.
Yes.
In the past, I've been making things up, and people were, telling me not to do that. And now I'm doing it for good.
It's a good
And I hate
reason.
to say this,
Mm-hmm.
but that is very, very much parallel
Mm-hmm.
with the true story of Joseph Smith.
Mm.
Joseph Smith
Mm.
was accused multiple times and even was brought in front of the law because
Ah.
he was going around telling people that there was treasure buried in their backyard when there wasn't. And he was going around saying that he was able to divine certain things that weren't true. And so ultimately, his father was even caught on the record saying, I really hope that one day he will be able to use this talent for good. And I think Joseph Smith
Ah.
figured out a way. I think he figured out a way that, okay, I'm so charismatic. I'm such a good storyteller. I'm such a good deceiver. But what if I deceive people for good? Maybe I
Yeah.
still get to sleep with a bunch of women. Maybe I still get a lot of money. Maybe I
Mm-hmm.
still get power and prestige. But at least they're out there doing good. Elder Cunningham
Yeah.
ultimately is kind of finding himself in a very similar situation where
Yeah.
he's like, well, I'm very good at storytelling, but at least I can help people and I can say, no, don't cut off a woman's clit because a woman's clitoris, sorry, is he says
It's yeah,
clitoris.
clitoris.
Yeah, he has a hard time saying that word. But yeah, that it's
It's
holy
holy.
amongst all things,
Yes.
and so he and I say, praise the body. Thank you,
Yeah.
Elder Cunningham, for raising the clit to holy amongst all things. I
Yes.
appreciate that as a
And I
woman.
am a believer in the
So
clitoris too. So yeah, there it
there we
is.
go. So
Yes.
praise the body,
Yeah.
and
If we look at it on a bigger scope in Christianity, as I think, because I can come from that angle, looking at the niche version of Mormonism and applying it to Christianity and modern apologetics, is how people came to the conclusion that slavery was wrong. Right? It's the same thing. They looked at the
yeah,
needs of the people and they saw how horrible things
that's
were. And
right.
it's like, well, obviously God does not want slavery. It's like, where? Where does it say God doesn't want slavery? Where? Show me. There
Yeah,
were other Christians that were challenging other Christians, saying, why and where does God say I can't own slaves? Because I can show you where He does say I can do it, and where
yeah,
I can buy them from, and how long I can own them from, and who, and how I can treat the women differently from the men, and how I can own the women and the children of the man's slave if I'm able to trick him to marry a woman whilst he's married as my slave, and then the woman and the children will be my slaves forever whilst the man can go free, or unless I can trick the man to say that I love my wife and children, and then he can be my slave forever
mhm,
as well. I have all of these details in Numbers, Leviticus, Exodus. You show me where God does not say that we should own slaves. Yeah, well, he freed the Jews, so you see, he doesn't like slavery, because if he didn't like slavery, he wouldn't save them from Egypt and take them out of slavery. Oh, okay, I can actually see how you're thinking. Ah, that actually makes sense. Insert Frederick Douglass, insert Martin Luther King, insert all of these abolitionists that took framing of a religious idea that was already existent, that was not helpful at that time for 1,500 years of slavery, and then they
Yeah.
reframed it with an already rigid fundamental system that's already existing, and said, you know what,
Yeah.
how do we make this palatable to people who already hold these ideas, but they
Hmm.
can feel comfortable enough to come out and defend the idea that
Yeah.
slavery is wrong? But
Yeah.
it takes creativity to look at certain points of the book to mesh it up and create new
Hmm.
framings and new stories to
Yeah.
say God does not like slavery. If you look at this bit and look at that bit and you twist it and you squint hard enough and you think about it and you read the Greek Septuagint and the Codex Sinaiticus and you read all of these weird things, and then all of a sudden the Bible says God does not like slavery. Whereas if you look at the literal sense and you look at the real representation of the biblical character, he's perfectly fine with slavery. So that's it. It's reframing is a powerful thing when it comes to
Yeah.
storytelling, and people have done that in the
Yeah.
past, in religion,
Yeah.
out of religion. And I hope that there's going to be more reframing when it comes to Mormonism. There's going to be more reframing around Christianity. So much that in the next maybe 20, 50 years, Christianity will look like nothing like it looks like now, like it has looked like in the past thousands of years. It will keep on evolving because human beings keep getting creative. We're curious creatures, and we're just amazing. We're just cool sometimes, like Elder
Yeah.
Cunningham, right?
Yeah. Exactly. And he really did want to try to help these people, and so he
Yeah,
changed.
he changed it to fit the
He
narrative
changed
that
the,
they
yep.
needed.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
You're making things up again, Arnold.
All
Da, da, da,
conscience.
da, da. I know. I was like, oh, Conscience. Yeah. He's so cute. He's so cute.
I
I love
loved
him.
him. I
Yeah,
loved him.
he's so fun. And, last two things that I wanted to say that the Book of Mormon musical got right is also the unshakable optimism. Evans, now that you know, where was the Garden of Eden?
Oh, Missouri?
Pop quiz.
Missouri?
Yeah, specifically
Oh,
Jackson
Jackson
County,
County. I keep
Missouri.
forgetting.
I
Jackson.
know.
I knew it was something county. I just didn't remember what it was. Jackson County, Missouri.
I
Yes.
believe. Yeah.
Here we
So
go.
that song specifically, the I Believe song, it nails that forced optimism and literalism, where
Mm,
belief itself is treated as the highest virtue, even when
mm.
it makes no sense.
Especially when it makes no sense.
I have been to the Garden of Eden, Evans.
No.
I have. I was there. I was visiting some friends, and I found out actually these friends, when they were dating, he actually proposed
In the
at the
Garden
Garden
of
of
Eden.
Eden. Yes,
Whoa,
he
that
did.
has to be
Yeah.
like the height of romance, right?
I
I
I would
mean,
say yeah. I mean that
I
she
mean,
said yes. So
well,
yeah,
she
they
better have said yes at that
yeah,
time.
I
I
mean, she
mean,
was at the Garden of Eden, and yeah,
that.
it's crazy. And, it also critiques the blind obedience and how Mormons are praised for loyalty over critical thinking.
Mhm.
And I
Mm.
remember even having just friends that were studying at the University of the Church, Brigham Young University, and how ultimately they said, I left the church because I was taught to critically think. And when I started to, the church told me I was bad and I was disloyal and I was all these things, but they
Wow.
taught me to think, at the university. And so I
Mm.
just chose to think. And I would argue that's what led me out is my thinking, is my questioning, is my allowing myself to be like, okay, I want to not just blindly follow, I want to know and I want to do it. I want to study it out in my mind and in my heart and then make a decision based on what the evidence presents,
Mm.
not an apologetic approach anymore. I'm not going to already have the conclusion. I'm going to allow to have the evidence lead me to the conclusion, not
Mm.
the other, not the conclusion help me through confirmation bias or an echo chamber or
Mhm.
whatever, have that. And unfortunately, you aren't really allowed to do that in the Mormon faith.
Sorry for interrupting.
No, you're good.
When I was deconstructing, and that would later lead to my deconversion, and I was talking to other friends at that time,
Yeah.
in the religion, a lot of them would say, "Oh yeah, I've had these questions too. I just I prayed to God and He revealed Himself to me, and
Sure.
it kind of resolved a lot of the problems to me. And my
Hmm.
my response was, well, if you were waiting for God to give you some sign, then you were not
Hmm.
really asking the questions, were you? Like
Yeah,
if you're
sure.
asking your father, why were you late to my football game yesterday? Like something like that. Like I would like to know, why were you late to my football game yesterday, Dad? And then your dad buys you ice cream, and then, oh, makes it okay now. Like, oh, okay, that's fine. Dad bought me ice cream, and that's all okay. It's like, well, did you want to know the answer to the question? Because I would still be licking the ice cream and be like, all right, Dad, so where were you last night? Like, yeah, like the question still stands. The ice cream does not compensate as an answer to the question. The question still stands. Where were you last night during my football game? That's the question. Why are you
Yeah.
answering with an ice cream? So that's how my brain would go. It's like a lot of them would say, well, I had these questions, but then God revealed Himself to me. So all of those issues were resolved. Okay, so what are the answers then? Okay,
Yeah.
so you still don't have the answers. Okay, but how do you say that it's resolved when one, you don't have the answers, and two, you are satisfied with the results that you got, which means that were you asking the questions to get answers for the questions, or were you asking the questions because you think it's gonna get you what you want?
Hmm.
Isn't that a manipulative relationship? That's very strange. You're manipulating God. That's strange here. But that's a lot of the time. That's the response I would get.
Yeah.
God revealed Himself to me, and therefore I didn't have those questions anymore. It's like
Yeah.
that's not how questions get resolved. You don't have a nice feeling, and all of a sudden the questions don't exist. That's not how questions work. I still want to know, like, how did all the animals march to the ark? How did the penguin get to Noah's ark?
Yeah.
Oh, well, God revealed
Yeah.
Himself to me. Oh, okay, so now I no longer have to think about how the penguin got to the ark. No, no, that's not how it works. How did the penguin get to the ark? I'm still genuinely curious. Is there an answer, or maybe it's just a fantastical story? It's a very
Yeah.
strange thing, but it's
Yeah.
part of the thought-stopping brain shutdown, turn it off
Yeah.
practice
Yeah.
where you're taught to
Right.
do that. Just turn it off. Just hope that God gives you something. If you get a sign that makes you feel good, that is God telling you to stop asking questions, right? It's just so
Right.
strange to me.
Yep. So that unshakable optimism is very accurate, all of that. And that I Believe song, which I'd love to break down more later,
Mm,
is
definitely.
such a powerful song because it's just really like, I believe in all these crazy things. I am a Mormon, and a Mormon just
Just
believes.
believes.
The very
Interesting.
last one is the good intention of members.
Mm,
Despite all the satire, the musical doesn't portray Mormons as evil, just well meaning,
mm,
naive, and indoctrinated. It
mm.
captures the sincerity of many members who genuinely want to help and believe they're doing God's work,
Mm.
even if they're completely unprepared. And
Interesting.
here's the
Yeah.
thing, my experience was always that the church would always say that the members are flawed, but the church is true. And the more I open my eyes to things, the more I realize actually the church is flawed, the
Mm,
church isn't true, and the
mm,
members are actually really good people. And they're
mm.
just doing what they've been told to do. And
Wow.
they act as they have been commanded to act. And so for me, the longer, I used to blame the people. I used to be like, oh, whenever something didn't line up, it wasn't the church that was flawed. Like I said, you don't
Mm,
question the leaders. You're asked not to. They never apologize because they never do wrong. And really, the truth is that no, are wrong and they do wrong and they teach harmful doctrines, they do harmful things, and the people are the collateral damage. They are the ones that unfortunately
yeah.
bear the burden and they get the blame, and
Mm,
they're not the ones at fault because most of them you will find are just wonderful, genuine people that are just trying to execute what they've been told, just like we talked about when you were playing the devil's advocate so astutely. It is so true that these poor boys go out there and they're just doing what they're told, and they have all this pressure and they're just carrying out their orders basically, and their intentions are very good, and they're just a product of this whole system.
that's why they have to condition them. before they ship them off to
Yeah.
these places. They have to isolate them from their families. All of these things are conditioning.
Yeah.
It's just like
And
being,
Evans, it doesn't begin at 19 at the missionary training
of
center. It
course not, of
begins
course
in
not.
infancy. It
Yeah.
begins as, we have we have Mormon songs, that I'm gonna go serve a mission. I hope they call me on a mission when I have grown a foot or two.
Wow. Yeah.
I hope by then I will be ready
Mm.
to teach and preach and do as missionaries do, something like
Something
that.
like
But
that.
these were the songs that we grew up
Right.
with because we
Right.
wanted to go on a mission.
Yes. Yes. It's
Because that
it.
was the
Yeah.
noblest of callings, and
Well,
that was
that's
when,
yeah. That was gonna be my point. Is sold as that the sales pitch is given to them before
yeah,
they come out and spread
yeah,
the sales. It's already given to them to say, if you
I
want
know,
to help the world, if you want to be a good
yeah,
person, this is
yeah,
how you go about it, and you can't do it any
yeah,
other way other than the way that we say it.
no,
Choose the right, follow the prophet, all of these things is that this is how you be a good human being on the planet. In any
hmm,
other way you go astray, you're being a bad person. Of
yeah,
course, anyone that is indoctrinated into this and they think that this is how they do good would follow their steps, and that's what they would do, although they inevitably cause harm to the world and they cause harm to themselves as well.
yeah,
Is that this is just us throwing a bit of, like an olive branch to say that we do understand. This is not just us poking fun. This is just it's not just us doing something easy to just laugh at a belief system. No, that's no, it's like we're going deeper than that. We're saying no, we do understand that because we were once participants in this. We do understand
yeah,
that a lot of people are coming at this, approaching it from a point of view to say, I want to be a good person, I want to help humanity. It's just the platform and the avenue that you have been forced into, that you've been conditioned to think through, unfortunately causes more harm than good. And if you can do good things despite what the religion teaches you, then why do you need it? You said something yesterday, or was it on Sunday actually, that was quite profound, and that was, anything that is good about Mormonism can be done outside of Mormonism. But the things that are
yeah.
unique to Mormonism,
What's unique to Mormonism isn't good, and what's good about Mormonism isn't unique.
right, right.
And that
That's
is
how you put
just
it.
something that it's a phrase that's been circulated, and I know I picked it up from somewhere, but it's so accurate.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, um, yeah,
I mean
that's what I came to learn.
that saying can be applied to
Yeah.
Christianity as a whole, in my opinion.
Yes,
Is what's
exactly.
unique to Christianity? What's unique to Christian? Well, what's good about Christianity is not unique. Well, love your
Yeah.
neighbors yourself, be kind to
No,
one another. You think
no.
prior to the Greeks coming up with Christianity, nobody was a good person? Prior to the
Right.
Greeks sitting down and writing and putting the names Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John in the books to
Mm,
say, oh, these are the people that wrote the book. You think prior to that, people didn't know to be good and kind to people? You
hmm.
think prior to the Ten Commandments, let's go all the way back to the Torah. Prior to the Ten Commandments in the Bible, people didn't know that murder was wrong around all of ancient Near Middle East, Babylon, Mesopotamia, Canaan. None of them knew that Canaan was wrong until later on Moses, who commits murder in Egypt and runs away, by the way, because of the murder that he committed. Because the Ten Commandments was not existent first, he wouldn't have known that the murder was wrong, although he knew that the murder was wrong, which means that there would be a moral system in Egypt anyway, and they would know that murder was wrong. And that's why Moses ran away, because murder was wrong. Later on, goes into and meet God in a burning bush, and then gets told, later on, free the Israelites, gets told that murder is wrong. Then that's when we human beings knew that murder was wrong. Are you kidding me? Come on, man. Be honest with
Yeah,
yourselves. Things that are unique to Christianity, most of them are horrible and bad things. That's why it's unique to
that's right.
Christianity. Like thinking
Yeah,
that it's okay that everyone else that doesn't think like you will be tortured
yeah,
or murdered or genocided in some shape or form.
right.
That's what's unique to your religion. But the things that are good about your religion, the things that helps you build community, the things that bring people together, the things that
Yeah,
make you be kind to one another and treat people with empathy and stuff like that, all of those things can be found in other ways, in other belief systems, in other ideologies and ways of thinking. It's
That's
not
right.
unique to your religion.
Other philosophies
Other
and so on.
philosophies, yes, it's not unique to your
So
religion,
yeah,
not unique to your Jesus.
that's kind of like a good way to end with the idea that storytelling is extremely powerful.
Oh yeah, oh
And
yeah,
we don't know the beginning, the end, how much of things are true and how much are taken out of context, how many things are exaggerated, how many Book of Arnolds do we believe as
right,
gospel truth and are really just Book of Arnolds,
yeah,
and are just, Lord of the Rings or, the Chronicles of Narnia
yeah.
or anything else like that.
Although Lord of the
So
Rings would definitely be a religion I would join if it had a religion. So that's just one
good to
thousand
know.
percent. Is if there was a cult for Lord of the Rings, I would be a member and I would recruit you too. So, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Uh, I'm pretty sure that that may exist, first of all. And second of all, hell no. No. No,
Oh
not
man,
me.
it's quite.
No, thank you.
I'm sure it would be quite a liberal cult because Lord of the Rings is
Oh.
it's Lord of the Rings is very pro woman. So,
Well then.
oh
All
yeah,
right, you should have led with
oh
that.
yeah.
Maybe I would have given it a thought.
I mean, the one who takes out Sauron, the Dark Lord, is a woman.
Yeah.
A woman, and a hobbit takes out
I don't know, Evans. I
the
think I
Dark
fell
Lord.
asleep
So
by that part.
yeah,
So
maybe
I probably
that
fell asleep.
that's okay. That's okay. I mean, it wasn't like that's the most exciting part of the movie, but that's fine. That's okay.
Boo.
You're allowed. But anyway,
All
just
right.
kidding,
I
guys.
think that those are the things that I would say are the things that the Book of Mormon musical gets right. I would like to continue the conversation next time and
Definitely.
talk about possibly the things that it didn't quite dare to say, either
Ah,
because of comedic timing, audience accessibility, avoiding crossing certain lines,
right,
but
right.
I would like to discuss those things. And then ultimately, I kind of do want to do a little bit of a sing along with everybody and kind of point out my favorite lines and lyrics of different songs. And so we're going to keep going. And I've enjoyed it so far, unpacking this really great, fun musical. And I think this is a good place for us to stop for today.
Yes,
So
I agree.
thank you for letting me glow about this really fun musical that
You're
is
welcome.
a riot, and I loved it. And I'm glad you got to see it and that you love it too. And
Yes.
anyway, let's keep going, but this is a good place to stop. So
I
thank
still got maggots in my scrotum.
you.
Yeah, that's the line in the
I
musical.
have maggots in my skin. Yes.